So if you're good to go, I'll
Yeah, sure.
jump in. This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. Today we have a WWE Hall of Famer and wrestling legend, one of the greatest intercontinental champions of all time. He was so great that Dwayne Johnson took his nickname, the Original Rock, also known as Magnificent Don Muraco, all the way from Sunset Beach, Hawaii.
Aloha. It's a hell of an introduction there. If I can live up to it.
You got someone checking in from Atlantic City, New Jersey. Any memories from there? I know WrestleMania 4, you were in New Jersey.
Yeah. Robert.
How have you been?
Good. Old, but good.
You still swimming regularly?
Yeah, just got my hour in this morning. Got back
nice.
and decided to play with the my iPad here. They took my computer away and left me an iPad, but that's cool.
I'm sure all the fan wants to know how your daughter's doing. Your beautiful daughter.
They're in Japan.
Really?
Yeah. Her and my two grandsons took off for it's spring break here for the kids. So they went snowboarding and touristing, except from some people with the couple in the back. They went with them.
Yeah, I guess when you're from Hawaii, Japan really is just as far, if not closer, than Aspen, Colorado.
Yeah, it's like 7-8 hours going and 4 to 6 hours coming back because of that jet stream thing. So it works out. It's a nice trip.
Someone on here is asking, did you ever know Crush Brian Adams from Kona, Hawaii?
Yeah, I met him a couple times. I think before he got in the business, or when he was getting in the business, and then after he retired, he came back. He ran a couple shows over in the Big Island of Hawaii. I don't know if they did that well, but he had like Road Warriors and Bam Bam and Papa Shango and a bunch of the good card he had.
Yeah, he was another one of the unfortunate ones that passed away young.
Yeah, real young.
Yeah, he was good buddies with Macho Man, I think.
Was he?
Yeah, because Macho Man used
to be here in Hawaii.
Okay,
but I never knew him when he was on the road there.
He was
from Portland.
Oh yeah, he started in Portland.
Yeah. Good guy. Seemed like a good guy. Fair payoff, decent payoff guy. Running those independent shows. That was pretty cool with that.
Were you in Portland much?
When I first started, I was in Vancouver, and then it sent us down to Portland to do TV and stuff over there at the thing, and then later on, after I was in Vancouver for a few months, if I wasn't booked they weren't booking me in BC, I'd talk to Don Owens. He'd use me for 3 or 4 shots over in the Portland, Salem, Eugene, those areas there. I remember I went down with TV. TV was $75, and then that was a Saturday. Then they had another big show on a Tuesday, and if I had a $400 a week, my first week there, boy, I was high in the high. That was it, boy. I was ready for a Hall of Fame right there.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good, even for independence nowadays.
Well, this was back in the 70s. 70, in fact. My first, yeah. He would use me.
Steven says he enjoyed your matches with Tito Santana. Any memories of those?
Yeah, it would. Tito's one of the top, always the top babyface around there for years. I guess he still is. Yeah, he was. Yeah, Tito was. He was easy. Always always a nice night with him. No pain, no strain. All the guys I worked with back then. In fact, most of the guys everybody worked with back then. I saw after you left, I saw some YouTube things with Bill Eadie and the guy I used to work with, James Romero, and James was asking him, well, what was your toughest match, and what was your? And there were no tough guys. There were, I mean, there were lots of tough guys, but working together was exactly that back in those days, before WWE and all that stuff. Is working together. So guys, you're taking care of the guy you're working with, and he was taking care of you, and it wasn't I guess it's competitive or uh, you know approval seeking as it is now.
Yeah, Bill Eadie was a pretty good guy in my experience with him. What do you think the holdup is for getting Demolition in the Hall of Fame? They just announced the natural disasters, but there wasn't really a lot of fans begging for the natural disasters to get in. Demolition, they've wanted for a long time, but for some reason, no.
I don't know, some underlying heat there somewhere. Yeah, there's no reason why they shouldn't be. They were top tag for years, a couple, 2, 3, 4 years up there, and held the belts and great matches, everything. Good guys, good performers, always good business. So yeah, I don't know. Somebody has heat with somebody, obviously. It's like Koloff or a lot of the guys that haven't made it. It's just a personal deal.
Did you ever meet Sid before he passed? Psycho Sid?
Just a handshake. Just in past, he did a show. I think he did a show over here with Warrior and Taker and those guys on it. And but no, I never knew him. No, I just as a hand passing on a handshake.
Herberto wants to know any memories of your battles with Pedro Morales. He's from Puerto Rico.
All right, yeah. Morales, it was cool. That was old time. That was another one of those guys that was anytime he was fiery. Latin's, he's Latin, good comeback, fiery guy. Always emotions, always always safe. He's another guy like going back to Bill's interview on the other. Guys you work with. They're all everybody was good to work with back in those days. It wasn't this guy does heavy or too many bumps and it was safe. Nobody was taking giving power bombs one after another. Luckily, I got out of business before that came through.
How did you get your nicknames of The Rock and the Magnificent Muraco? Is there any stories behind that, or did you come up with those names yourself?
Magnificent one came from Buddy Rogers and Eddie Graham in Florida. I'd been there for a babyface. I did several successful runs down in Florida, and I was coming back as a heel. And there was always the comparisons between myself and Jack Briscoe, and the styles are similar, and the hair and stuff looked alike. So I was coming back to work. So they wanted to put it over, use something different to have work kind of switch there. So I told the story before, but so I started with a mask on and the Magnificent M, and then Steve Kern. They shaved. So that morning they shaved my head. So Steve Kern got on the TV, and which are those days, even today, he unprofessionally exposed me. Like, oh, that next. What do you mean that you're an M? That's Don Muraco. Everybody knows who that is. It was one of those kind of deals. Kind of just woo. They don't usually do that. Like Tim Woods is Mr. Wrestling or Johnny Walker's Wrestling too. That was unheard of. Or Billy Superstar or whatever. So no doubt. But just to somebody to come out and out me like that. So I got in the ring. I was all pissed off. I had a guy was, I think Don Serrano or somebody I was in enhancement, so I beat the hell out of him. And I was hauling and screaming when I had the mask on. So I was screaming and yelling for Kern. So Kern came in, and we got into a smosh. Then they pulled us apart, and he had a hold of the mask, and he pulled the mask off me. And when it came off, I was even bolder than this. And that was it. Kind of everybody used to say I'd been working there for the hair, and stuff for years, and it was just a mild shock. It shut the sportatorium up. They went from a cheering, that sportatorium building. They went to, just ooh. And then I started with so it was Eddie Graham and BR, the great BR, that came up with that gimmick. So it was, obviously it was a good one.
So that was magnificent. What about The Rock?
I don't know. I don't know how the hell that came about. It just as I was turning, they were turning me babyface with Bob Orton and I guess maybe Vince or somebody. I don't know. Somebody came up with The Rock. It wasn't, that's pretty not too original, but it's cool. Whatever, at the time. Everybody goes, The Rock? Now yeah, it's, it's right next to dirt and sand. So it's, but it's cool.
It keeps you connected with The Rock when people talk
Yeah,
about him.
sure, yeah. Get some extra bookings or something.
And Matt says, speaking of Bob Orton Jr., whatever happened with why you broke up with Bob Orton in WWE?
I guess they didn't have any plans for us. We were, it wasn't, we only got together by accident in the first place because Roddy he didn't want to make a couple towns or something. So he stuck me in there with Bob. So and that we kind of morphed into a team off of that, but it wasn't planned in the office. It wasn't, well conceived, but it turned out, we made a few bucks off of it.
Riza wants to know if you have any good Harley race stories.
Harley race. Well, he was the man, Harley was a guy. He was a great guy, good guy, and now he gets the credit for being the toughest man ever. But let's see, the old stand. I think it was Columbus, Ohio. We're in the Holiday Inn having a beer after the matches. So Harley gets up to go to the bathroom. I guess I wasn't in there, but I guess he was in the urinal, and somebody came in back of him and goes, "Hey, MF, Rick." But he ended up calling him Ric Flair. call him all the derogatory names, but he named him as Ric Flair. So I guess Harley turned around and with that left hand that he shoots like a spear gun. He just clocked the guy, and the guy went down. So we're sitting in the table. He came back. He sat down. He's leaned over. Buddy, can you go take a look at the guy? I knocked the guy out in the bathroom. I walked in about 5 minutes later. The guy's just starting to get up, all covered with blood. Knocked the shit out of him.
That's the good old days.
Yeah.
Who would have won between Haku and Harley race?
No idea. Everybody, it's all those guys. Everybody has their day, God. Yeah, I don't know. Luckily they never got together, but guys weren't back in then they weren't into if they man on mano stuff. I guess they do down the sportatorium or something. They had a wrestling ring, but it wasn't that. And those were all those were all bar hall, pool hall, lobby, getting drunk, beer parlor things.
Yeah, it's too bad those stories didn't come out about Haku when he was still active, because I think he's more popular than ever now that everybody knows them.
Really. And there's a case. There's Harley and Tonga. They're two of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. It's just wouldn't bother a fly. But you go, you run up against them or give them a hard time, you got a problem.
You probably wrestled Harley race too, I imagine.
Yeah, and Haku, the
Wow.
Islanders. Yeah, I wrestled Harley. He he dropped the Georgia championship and Georgia State belt on me before he took the world title the first time. So he was Harley was good. He come down when we were in Florida. Georgia, Florida. I worked with him a lot. I was a heel then, but previously in Georgia, and when I was babyface in Florida. But Harley, he came in with he used to come in with the belt, and me and Curtis, King Curtis, and Joe LeDuc, and a few other guys had the Charger plane. So we'd always save a seat for Harley on our plane. And he was pretty cool. We'd come back from Miami or West Palm or one of those shows, and if we had a good house, he'd get the office to pick up the plane. And that was always cool.
Yeah, speaking of you wrestling Tonga, I was looking up the highest attended show ever in my hometown of Ottawa, which I guess was a show which you probably don't remember, August 21st, 1986. It was at the CFL football stadium. You wrestled Haku.
Oh, yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
And this would have just, to you guys back in those days, it's just like, oh, this is another night. They didn't even film that show, and it was in a football stadium.
We were running, boy. We were moving in those days.
And again, you wrestle Haku. I mean, he had stiff chops when I wrestled him, but overall, like he's
Safe.
solid, but you don't have to worry about him.
Yeah, he would. He was safe.
Yeah.
Easy. His spots, everything. Everything was on. That was like a pre. I guess guys have problems now, but that was before those days when guys used to work together, and it wasn't a case of, can you out top this and top this and that.
Well, you were also on the road 7 days a week, and you had to work together as a team to draw the biggest house to make the most money. So it's not as individual as it is now, where some people don't even wrestle every week.
I guess I don't know how they do the scheduling now, but yeah, everybody's running. They're running two, three shows a night, all over the country, and doing good business too. It
Yeah.
was good. There were transition times. It was going from the old, like, you talk guys, Pedro and Harley and Haku, and Pedro and Harley were old timers. Haku was younger than I was, newer than I was, and I was right in the middle between, following Pedro and Harley. They had a good 10, maybe 12, 15 years on me, and then as the transition into WWE, WWF took place. So that was a trip.
Did you notice much of a difference in your level of fame during that period with WWE as far as when you're going through airports and stuff? Was it any more difficult, or did people always know you from the local televisions in the territory where you wrestled?
Well, when you're in the local area, you're on the local TVs, and then when you're on the WWF, you're just, it was just international, or international, going wherever you went, all the towns and stuff. So you were obviously, noticed more places by more people, but you weren't in access to everything like you were when, with Vince.
Someone's asking, when WWE would come to Hawaii, would you let any of them stay at your house? You're a little far away from where they used to come, right?
I didn't have this house back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I live on the other end of the island from Waikiki.
Did they just do like the main town, Honolulu, or did they do numerous towns when they were?
Usually, yeah. I don't know if they did the other ones, but they just and Hawaii, Honolulu was more of like a spot show in that time because they could come in and they didn't have to they didn't have to give them a current main event, a hot angle or anything was going. They could have whoever the chap was, Backlund or somebody, or Macho Man, but they didn't have, or whoever the angles were, they didn't have to have the angle guys going, whether it's Flair and Macho Man or whatever, It could be Flair, but he'd wrestle somebody else, or, Macho Man would wrestle somebody. They wouldn't have to stick to the angles. They would just give them regular house shows without following, the scheduled TV.
So when you guys had to go there, I guess you're from there, so you'd be happy. Would some people be like, "Oh man, I got to go 12 hours to
Yeah,
Hawaii and 12 hours back"?
yeah. It wasn't a real popular. I don't know what it became later, but in fact, I don't think we were really even running Honolulu. I think AWA Vince Vern was at the time when I was in WWF. Vern AWA and Vern was over here, and then Leah Maivia had her stuff going, her and Peter. But there was no, and I guess she had help from some help from Vince and other, because Peter was real close with McMahon's.
Oh, of course. And now The Rock owns a large chunk of stock for WWE. He's one of the
Yeah.
top shareholders. Somebody says you've always had incredible shoulders. Any tips on how to build them up?
Well, I surfed all my life, and then when I was young, I got in a bicycle car. I was bicycling. I hit by a car. So then I spent the next 6 8 months on crutches. So for triceps and shoulders, I wouldn't recommend it. But with that surfing with the crutches for extended period of time, I think had a lot to do. So yeah, it's not a recommended uh, direction to take.
For side laterals, did you do a lot of those in the
No, I
gym
did a
later?
lot of clean and press,
Okay.
cleans and presses behind the necks. It wasn't, and I did laterals, but mostly as a supplement to a behind the neck or something like that. It wasn't as focused. The rest, my son trains a lot, so the wrestling techniques are real. Not the wrestling, workout techniques are different, even different now. The last 25, 30 years from what I used to do.
Someone is wondering, did Dino Bravo and Iron Mike Sharp have any heat over who was Canada's true strongman? Because they both
No,
claimed it.
I don't think so. That was I think Dino's pretty much Dino had that argument. Dino
Yeah.
Dino was Dino was a horse. He used to bury. I used to train with him on the road. He was a good training partner. He was a good guy. He was a good training partner too. Come to bench and some of the behind the necks and some of those pressing, he just buried me. Some backs and stuff I could hang with him, but some exercise. He was a legitimate bench presser, 600 whatever.
Did you take protein powder in those days to help supplement
At
your protein?
times, it was hard to it's a pain in the ass to carry all that stuff on the road. You get the
Yeah.
drink. In those days, they had the drinks in the gym and the plastic bottles and stuff you'd buy. They'd right out of the bottle, so we'd be taking the protein that way. Because we in a different gym every day, so they'd have pretty much the supplements in the coolers there that you grab as you're leaving. Take one from going back to eat lunch or something, then again, that night. So you'd grab a couple and hang on to them for a while.
Tony wants to know whose idea was the Fuji Vice skits.
Vince, Vince Jr. That started off of the. I guess Piper didn't want to do a Search for Tomorrow. It's an old time soap opera, and they used to do those down in Manhattan, in New York City. So Piper didn't want to do it, so they grabbed me and Fuji at the last minute and said it was just kind of a storyline. Springfield, Ohio, or something. Springfield something was the name of the town, the city, and it was like just a repetitious thing. Like I was going there to meet Hulk for a title match, and they all these snippets that they put together for the whole week, and they worked it into a wrestling match. I don't think we never did one for the TV, but I think the end was they had just me and Fuji and they with Beach Bum and stuff. Just had us break up the studio. Just said, just don't break the television. That's all he said. So broke a bunch of chairs and tables and stuff. It's cool.
Was that skit when all those girls were oiling you up on the beach? Was that actually in Hawaii where they filmed that?
Yeah, yeah. Vince sent the film crew out, and the Nelson was the producer at the time. Yeah, and they hired three models to, So I was doing the Ric Flair thing with, the ladies and the diamond rings and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure your wife loved that skit.
She was pregnant. Yeah, she was big as a house.
Steven wants to know any memories of Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Sure. Yeah, it was a good time. There's all those places. They had good crews. The Georgia crew was kind of just like uh, Florida North. A bunch of great guys working up. Easy guys to work with. There was like the Andersons and Wrestling Two, Bob Roop, Buddy Colt was back and forth there. Jack Briscoe, Jerry Briscoe's up there. It was a good Ricky Gibson, Robert Gibson's brother. He and I hung around and did travel a lot together, baby faces. So yeah, Georgia like Florida. It was run a lot. Well, the same owners. There were a lot of the guys, same owners were part of their fingers in the pot there. So it was run the same. Gordon Soley. Gordon Soley was the announcer, and yeah, it was a good, easy production, easy promotion.
How did you get along with Ole Anderson?
Yeah, pretty much like everybody else. He was. They. I read now that he's. And they were a hell of a tag team, but their greatness is in their timing, and they're able to control the whole the pace of the match. They would get good heat though, but they weren't. They weren't a flamboyant team like they have, like the ones they had coming, like what's his name, Shawn Michaels and Jannetty and Tommy Rogers and his partner and those kind of guys. Gibson and
Ricky
Ricky.
Morton.
Yeah.
Were you there when Michaels and Jannetty had their first match that didn't end up going too well behind the scenes after with Jimmy Jack Funk?
I was there, but I wasn't. I wasn't there. I wasn't at the bar or whatever they were at when they were breaking glasses and stuff. No, so I didn't see any of that. They came in. They were real quiet when they first, seemingly so. I guess that night they went pretty wild, but they were real quiet. Their first time around, they weren't talking. Guys, well, you don't talk to. But you just leave them around there. Oh, they were pretty good. They were good workers, great workers.
What was Jimmy Jack Funk like? Because it seems like he stirred up trouble there, and Haku had the issue with him at one point.
He was good till he got drunk. Then he'd get drunk and get drunk and stupid. So that's yeah, no, that's not that's not unusual for a lot of guys.
No. Did he actually lose an eye that, like some people say, or that seems
Whether he
like it was
lost it or
big?
lost sight of it, I'm not sure. But yeah, he went around with that patch for the rest of the time.
Hmm.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a good thing. I wasn't there either when he pulled the eye, when he went for the eye.
Do you know why Dory Funk didn't last very long when he was doing that tag team with Jimmy Jack?
Oh, I don't know. Probably, a couple weeks on the road. A couple weeks on the road, he said, "Fuck this,
Yeah.
I'm out of here." He didn't need that.
What's it like on the road back then? Could you go through a typical couple of days, what your routine would be?
I get you're on the plane. Well, first night you fly to the first town, and depending what time you got there, work out, get a meal, go to the building, come out, get something else to eat or drink, go to bed. The next morning, you're on another 7 o'clock plane. Repeat, rinse and repeat. Same thing. The whole, and after a while, you got to know where all the gyms were, the places you wanted to eat. And so you get around for a while, you get a feel of it. But it was never like it was easy, this the goals here and a world gym there and what's it, Bill Pearl gym here in Ohio and Canada, these gyms. So pretty certain, your life was centered around a restaurant, a gym, and a night and a hotel where you're going to check in and where you're spending the night.
Was the pay every night in those days, or did you get a check?
Mm, later days, you could draw money, and when we first started with they'd pay every night. The smaller towns like Skolin or Savoldi, Phil Zacco, Monsoons towns, those places, they usually settled up with cash every night. And then the big towns like Garden, Philadelphia, all your big cities, usually you would come a check at either in the off, at TV a couple weeks later.
For your cage match with Snuka at the Garden, did you realize that day that that would be one of the most historic matches in the history of wrestling? Or were you just in the grind back then and okay, this is just an angle that we did?
Well, a little bit of both, was part of the grind and it was everyday thing. But we could, you knew that something was going down and something was happening, and it was. I don't think either of us had any idea of it being historic or life changing. It seemed like a good. The timing, man, was hot. And everything was, things were right, But to think that it would have everlasting, lasting impact that it did, I don't think we had a grasp for that yet.
How many times do you think you wrestled Snuka in your career? Because you wrestled him even in your younger days and all the way up into your older days
Well,
wrestling.
younger days we were baby faces. Later, yeah. How many? I don't know. Good God.
Be
All the
over a
smart.
hundred though, right?
Yeah, sure. All this, figured 2 or 3 shows in the big towns, to reach to a blow off, to reach to a get to a blow off point where you get to your second or third match, where it's a strap match or a cage match or a death match or something like that. So we had a couple, tune ups for that, and that was in the big towns, and then all the small towns, and if they could bring it back, had the opportunity, an open date to bring it back, they'd bring it back.
And
It
I
was
would
great though.
imagine you're not planning out those matches, right? Because you guys know each other pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. I would just and you weren't giving them earth shaking finishes or anything. Usually a count out or DQ or you want to save the all the clever shits for the weekend for the Hartfords and the Gardens and the Philadelphias, stuff like that.
It seemed like he usually had a guy that almost took care of him. Would that be right? Like they put Buddy Rogers with him for a while. In later years, the Metal Maniac helped drive him around, but it seemed like there was always somebody that would like make sure that he would make it to the towns. Would that be about right for him?
Yeah, yeah. He was a buddy, and then he was with Steve Lombardi and a couple other guys. But he had problems with English and stuff too. So reading and English weren't his strong suits. So it was he needed help at times on the road when the traveling got that extensive, and his appearance was important. Was vital. A lot of those shows.
Someone's wondering if that Fuji Vice was part of the script, or was this just calling on the fly? Like, would you get a script and say, "This is what you're doing. Here's your line"?
Yeah, everybody get a script with food.
Yeah.
And the guy Nelson, he said, no, we never tell Mr. Fuji what to do. He let him run. I remember one time something will last the test of time, and Fuji's line was, "It'll last the taste of time," and he's like, "Let it go. That's good." So Fuji could murder the language really, like nobody's business. For somebody that was raised English and and everything else, he uh, he did that Japanese Mr. Moto talk real good.
Did he have a Japanese accent when you guys would
No,
just
he
be
didn't speak
talking?
Japanese at all.
Oh,
He,
that's funny.
he didn't know. Yeah. Yes, Fuji, what's up? I said, don't ask me. I don't know Japanese. Hey, he didn't know Japanese. Yeah, zero. He knew,
That's
I guess,
great.
household names and little, normal, regular stuff going around. He had a grasp of, but yeah, he had no idea. My oldest grandson, he reads Japanese. He spoke more Japanese than Fuji does. He was good around though. He was good eating though. Knew what to order.
Yeah, I can imagine. The Dave Kruger says thoughts on Bobby Heenan saying you always had the best weed.
Yeah, well, true, true.
Good.
Sometimes, but coming from here, I always did. Yeah,
What is it about Hawaii that has what was it called? Maui Wowie is the brand that everyone always talks about from there.
I guess it's the growing seasons, huh? And then, they started growing, getting rid of the male plants and just having the growing the females, and they started just growing it right, growing the buds and stuff instead of not letting cross pollination. Long time ago.
WWE just put WrestleMania 3 out on YouTube. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Matt wants to know what was it like walking out of there in front of 93,000 fans?
It was a trip, man. It was a trip. It was especially we opened the card too, Bob and I and Martel and Tom Zink. But it would seem like you could look at on the top rafters and see the individual people. It was like they're right on top of the ring. It was a few people experience sight like that, especially in the ring. When the individual things. It was cool.
Lewis wants to know, do you remember wrestling Shane Douglas in a squash match where you gave him a one-handed pile driver?
I remember wrestling him in AEW, not Todd Gordon, ECW and stuff. But no, I don't remember. He was young. He was just a young. He was like Kurt Hennig, Eddie Gilbert. He was those kids. Those guys were kids. But I was around them a lot more. I was around Eddie and Kurt. Kurt we traveled with a lot, and Eddie later. Both those guys, they're both enhancement talent. They both turned out to be superstars. Eddie was a great mind, great booker, great worker, and then Kurt was uh, headed for unreal things, but with the knees and stuff. Kurt, we started when he started with knee problems and stuff because he came when he was just Kurt Hennig. He used to travel around with Rick Martel and Gorilla and those guys, but he'd had knee problems in high school or junior college or something like that, which hindered his progress in playing college football and stuff like that. So his old man, Big Larry, got him started on the road. He was a hell of a hand. He was one of these guys. He was natural. You know,
Dave says the best match he ever saw live was you versus Backlund, October 81, 1 hour draw in Philadelphia. Do you have any memory of this one?
I think it's after doing an hour that afternoon in DC. So yeah, it was. I tried that. I don't have a memory per se of that match, but we wanted to go and put together, not a completely different match, but a different, segments and scene, items and stuff that were in from the. We'd go a different direction than we had in the Washington D.C. match just a couple hours earlier. So, but of the particulars, no, I don't remember.
Was there any bonus for going an hour in those days? Because WWF wasn't necessarily known for being the hour territory.
The only bonus was you wouldn't have to remember or finish. Uh, that was about it. That was with
Oh
Bob though.
man,
It was easy.
yeah.
Backlund, another tough guy. That was just a piece of cake in the ring. All these guys are. It's boy when you go through two schools when you go through on the internet with the YouTubes and stuff like the tough guys and badass guys and stuff that came from even my generation, and that how easy they were to work with as we all worked together in those days. They weren't you know maybe Haku or Harley, but nobody looked at him as a world class tough guy. So I was just I'm working with Harley tonight, and that's cool. It was good. Harley works hard. If I was babyface, he likes to lead, so I'll just follow. Whatever somebody else, I'll heel and I'll take the lead. But it wasn't. Yeah, it was a different business. It was really a different business.
Yeah, it's definitely changed into something. Well, for instance, you probably saw the John Cena heel turn. They did the heel turn, then The Rock did a press conference right after talking about it out of kayfabe, where that never would have happened in the old days. If you do an
Oh
angle,
no,
you'd
yeah,
sell it at least until the angle was over, right?
yeah, sure. I didn't actually. I saw it post post production. I saw it the next couple of days and didn't really see. I know he hit him a low shot and that's it. But that's about all I saw of it. But yeah, he would never prolong. Tell well we did this and we talked about that before. We wanted to do it this way. And, nah, everything that would always be hold it down.
I'm not sure if anyone has real heel heat anymore. You can be a heel, but I don't think anyone's getting really attacked these days or anyone is actually despised like you were at various points. What were some of the philosophies you had about being a heel for someone like me that might be doing a few more matches as a heel? Any advice on your philosophy?
Well, keep you work to your style. However, if you're the heel and you're calling the match, there's things you do and things you like, things that work for you. And if you were the baby face that has a certain repertoire and stuff, and you can get it done and you can squeeze it in and it's going to look good, then yeah, you add it, of course. Whatever you can to enhance the match, you do it. But basically you're basically in control. You're leading the direction. But if you're a good heel, you know what the baby face is capable of, and what again, and there's high spots and stuff. Like back working for Shires, when he'd want like every match, every single match, he'd like get like 3 to 5 single high spots if you're a single match, and then like 5 to 8 high spots if you're in a tag, and that was every match was like that. So it was just that's the way it was.
Someone says they're glad to see you doing well. Memories of Mr. Perfect.
I just went over him. He's a good kid, good guy, wanted to learn, did learn. He was he came after Barry Windham. So I went through Barry Windham first. I had Barry when Barry was 220 pounds, 6'6". He but he would Barry, like they have the angles sometimes on YouTube and the Florida TV. Like the first match, I just beat the shit out of him. No comeback, no nothing. And then we had about 3 matches where he finally got over, and he was learning and he was defending himself. I mean, went through one thing where Dusty was the booker, and he watched a John Travolta Urban Cowboy was out at the time, had just come out, and Dusty was watching. So he wanted a thing where Wyndham and I had been going. So Wyndham was going to come, and I was spieling off a bunch of crap to Gordon, and he was coming. He was going to whack me in the back from behind with that chair across the head. And I think that's the hardest thing I've ever had to do, is to wait for a chair coming. I know I'm going to take a chair across the head, but from behind, and not being able to tense up or knowing where it's coming from or when it's coming. Or that was a blow your mind spot. Not knowing,
Yeah.
you're getting the chair, and you know it's going on your neck and stuff, but you don't know, when
That's
the time.
happened to me twice, and both times I've been busted open in the back of my head from that,
Oh,
by the way. I just got to
God.
say, it's not fun. I know what you're talking about.
It's hard to, yeah, you don't know where you know the chair's coming, but you don't know when. So you don't know what the hell to do with how to tense your neck, or how to tense up or anything. You're just standing there loose and relaxed, and whack. And he missed with the chair anyway. He came right across the top here with one of the rims of the chair, split me open. And yeah, I got split
Yeah.
open too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I literally got split open both times that happened, and those are like the only times I've been legit split open by a
yeah,
chair.
yeah.
But someone is asking, you were the very first winner of the original King of the Ring in 1985. So there's a good piece of trivia there. What was it like to be part of that inaugural event and winning it?
Nobody had any idea what was going to happen. I think I had Piper and Pedro and Les Thornton, and finished up the last match for King of the Ring was with Sheik, Iron Sheik, and that was we knew that was easy. Dogs again. Here we go. And that was easy because, you know, I was hot. I was a hot heel, but as hot as anybody in the territory ever. But you got to realize, to a point there, you're not going to out heat the Sheik, because it's, he's killing American people and bombs and war and everything. So you're not you're an American guy. You're not gonna not gonna out heat the Sheik. So I just said, I don't even want to try. I said, give me a blade. I'll just blade and then load your shoe up with that shoe of yours, and then just cut me open, beat the shit out of me, and then have Fuji come with the salt, and then 1, 2, 3, and that was it. And the people popped because they, regardless what the heel and the two heels, Fuji and I were, Fuji and I were top heels, hated, but I mean, you got to be reasonable. You're just not going to get over the Sheik, Iron Sheik, with the Iran and the Ayatollah and all that other crap going down. And or if you're trying, you're just going to have to work too goddamn hard to do that, to get And Cosgrove wasn't that great a worker where he could get that kind of sympathy either, as he laying back, because he wouldn't be able to lay back that well. So it was, just easy for me to lay back, get the juice, boom, big comeback, go for the finish. Out comes the salt, bang, I duck. So she gets it. And that was it. Hence, King of the Ring.
And I was talking earlier about the house show from my town that wasn't televised or anything. I don't think there's even any pictures of that. And that was at a stadium with over 23,000 people. They didn't even document it that well back then.
It was the first one. I don't think it was. It was just.
It's like a house show, right? A special
Yeah,
house
yeah.
show.
They just somebody just put that card together with that idea of having King of the Ring tournament because obviously it was the first, and then went to what it is now.
Well, there you go. You can take credit for the success of the franchise.
The WWE.
Chris Briggs says, any memories of the pile driver video where it was you, I think Billy Graham, Vince McMahon as construction workers?
Oh, that one, yeah. And we did that one out in Oakland. That was pretty cool. I remember the catering was from Northern California. Now blueberries and all that stuff was cool. It was more hippie. It was a hippie dippy catering company. It was really good. Yeah, it was Hulk and Billy Jack, Superstar. Was Atlas? Is there a black guy in there or not? I can't see. But
I'm no, they kept the black guy out of there. It was
oh, there it
you,
is. I was the black
Vince.
guy.
You're right beside Vince. How was he that day?
Oh yeah, there's Vince. He was all right. Still driven, still self-possessed.
You know what? We can honestly say you're doing the best these days out of this crew. Without a doubt.
Hulk's doing good. I already.
He's doing all right, but there's some obvious. I know you guys are buddies, but there's always some controversy around him.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook something was bitching. He was leaving the autographs or something. They weren't getting enough autographs, and Mickey Doyle I keep in contact with all the time. I said, "What the hell's he doing?" Didn't he do like $190 million lawsuit settlement? But
yeah, I don't even know why he's bothering getting the heat from that.
And then Mickey said because he's selling that beer.
Yeah,
he's got that beer to sell, so that's
which he's making a lot from. I mean, he's not hurting.
I suppose, yeah. If I had $90 million in the bank, I don't know if I'd be out hawking autographs.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess at some of them he just gave a speech, and at others they had said it was going to be free autograph, but then he got there and you had to buy the specific beer to get it.
Yeah. But, I don't know.
Whatever. Out of all the managers you worked with, Grand Wizard, Captain Lou Albano, Mr. Fuji, what did each of them teach you?
Well, the Wizard was cool. The
Yeah.
Wizard, he was my first one. He was the kind of guy that he would do anything and everything for the guy he was in charge of. He was a tremendous promo guy. He used to do religious stuff from Detroit and Ohio and stuff on the like Ernest Angley and stuff for the Feel the Box and Feel the Lord and stuff like that. And then he morphed into the Farouk with the original Sheik, and then I had him, and he was a great guy, good little guy, nice guy. Didn't bother, had Vince Senior's ear, so he was good to have. Lou, second hand, they stuck him with me, I guess, because they wanted somebody to come out of the snooker angle with and do all that stuff. So Lou was cool. Lou was a wild man. He's the one that got me into the meatball sandwich promo or match, where I did because I wanted to. My thought was I was trying to be just like Lou, and Lou was always slobbing down something, So I went in with eating the meatball sandwich while I was wrestling Frankie Williams, I believe. So that was my kind of subtle. I want to be just like Lou, and then
you also used a cabbage at a steel cage match once, didn't you? I seem to recall that in one of your promos.
Probably,
you, like, shred it.
Yeah. If there was a gimmick around, I'd pick it up and use it. I never shied away from gimmicks.
Yeah, there you go. It just comes to you as you go. We didn't really talk about your intercontinental championship runs during our last interview, which, with if any fan wants to watch it, it's in the description of this video. But you're best remembered for your intercontinental title runs, arguably. Any memories you could share with us, or maybe your favorite defenses?
They were good. That was a good time. I had well, first I was married to Pedro, and once you got used to that big left hand in the stomach, it was cool. It was it was always there for everything. First was Pete, then of course Jimmy Snuka, Rocky Johnson. I worked with him for about 5-6 months with thing with Lou again, where he had me pinned and Lou bugged the referee, and they didn't miss the count. And then so I worked around with Rocky. Then I came out of that with Rocky and went to Snuka, and then dropped the belt back to Pedro. The next time I came back in, I took it off Pedro again, and then I don't know who I worked. I didn't work around with it too much, but I ended up dropping it to Tito. Worked with a lot of the top guys, then ended up dropping it to Tito. And Tito was always easy money.
Someone says they think you wrestled Haku at that big event in Toronto that had like 67,000. Do you remember that match?
No,
I think it was Hogan
I had a
against.
bunch of matches with Haku. We wrestled a lot, so it's and a match that chaotic and that 60,000-70,000 people. No, it's not. It's. I remember I was going to get in a fight in the stands one time, and that night somehow something happened. I was getting spit on or something. Went to grab the guy, and Vince was there, and said, "Oh, this little spit doesn't hurt." Yeah, right. But that was that's. But when and then the match, like a big match with guys like that, they're just not memorable because life was so easy. It wasn't any. It wasn't a big deal. Where I mean, it was good working with Tonga, but it was just cool.
Joseph wants to know, how did they approach you with superstar Billy Graham being your manager, and what were your thoughts on it at the time?
Just kind of happened, I guess. His I was working. That's the whole time they were shifting, like Orton and I was turning baby, and Billy's Billy's hips were giving him a problem. So it kind of it wasn't a big company decision or anything. It just kind of just worked out that way. Where I ended up with Billy.
Vanderstar wants to know, who could bench more, you or the Ultimate Warrior?
Oh, I don't know. I probably may when I was benching. I never saw Ultimate Warrior too long. I'm sure he probably could, but I never know him to go in and take up 400-500 pounds and bench. Or he did a lot of a lot of pumping, a lot of workouts. He worked out hard. He had to. He looked great. As good as he looked.
Len wants to know if you have any memories of the famous segment where you, Adrian, and Bob Orton destroyed Piper's pit and kicked the crap out of Piper. It was the Flower Shop Piper Pit segment.
Specific memories? No, I remember it. It was when Adrian was turning, and he was putting all that weight on, and Piper had that pit going. Vince would take guys. He'd take me, or he'd take somebody, and just, you're doing the interview, like Jake or Mulligan or something. You're doing the pit now. And okay. And then Muraco something, or somebody's this or that, and but that's how we broke up. Nobody ever really had intentions to move in and take take Roddy's place with the pit, with that and stuff. But A lot of guys just got set into that position. They need spots to be filled.
Did you get along with Adonis behind the scenes?
Yeah, yeah, we were good friends, and uh, the guy beat him up too. God, I can't remember.
Dangerous man, Dan, the left
Dan
hand
Spivey,
man.
yeah, and Dan Spivey too. I was friends with Danny Spivey too. Danny's a big old raw bone guy. I don't know why Adonis wanted to pick with him. I had some real good matches. I thought with Danny. Matching he was babyface. The match in Boston. I mean, they had him coming in the ring just about. So yeah, but I don't know what happened there. I wasn't even on the card when they got in that fight. All those fights I missed. I missed
Yeah,
I missed Billy
the
Jack and Mike
Rougeos.
Sharp, and I missed that one. Coco and Paul Roma. That was downstairs. I was in Chicago, but they were downstairs, and I was in upper stairs locker room. Paul Roma came in with a big bite mark on his side.
What was that all about? Just
I have
Paul
no
being
idea.
arrogant?
Yeah, I heard an N word or something like that. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Phil says you were the first main event at the Worcester Centrum 1983, you versus Putski. Any memories of this?
Ivan Putski, yeah. It was a point I was going to make later, or eventually, like Putski, Jesse the Body, um, Beefcake, bunch of guys like that. Bunch of guys that get bad reps for not being great workers. Or, they're taking a lot of bumps or doing a lot of stuff. Like when they got in the business, you didn't have to. You didn't need to move around, or you didn't need to be that a bump taker, or a great program. You could get by and get a lot of heat and draw a lot of money. Like Jesse with that body thing, or um, who's some Brutus with his barber thing, Putski with the Polish power and that hammer and stuff. It was
Jerry Lawler had the King's Court.
yeah, all the
Same thing. Yeah.
Well, Lawler could work pretty good though, but those guys they were slower, methodical. I worked with a guy, Rocky Montero, when I was first breaking in, and if you touch him before 5 minutes, he'd get pissed off. He would do back off, do that total, that backing off thing the whole time. He'd go beg, and go duck out the ropes and beg. If you're a babyface, you'd catch hell for, breaking that line, invisible line and attacking or something, that he was going to, he'd beg and beg forever. And a lot of the heels would start, that was how they start matches or even hold matches. And so I think it's unfair to something like Jesse or Beefcake or some of those guys to call them shitty workers when they're starting like Putski Ultimate Warrior. You're buying a ticket to see the Warrior. That's what you're buying to see, or see Putski. That's what you're paying for. See that Polish power to see. It does. It's not a. He's not going to be doing a Shawn Michael. Great bumps or great moves or anything else. But it's the memories and things that he presents you that he's brought, that the office has put in, that established into his repertoire that you get off on. BK with the scissors, or Jesse with the body, or Putski with the Polish power. Those, it's like greatest matches. And I just saw they had a thing with Flair and Steamboat on TV. The Dark Side, or the WWF thing, and and then they had with Steamboat and Macho Man, and the greatest matches of all time. Well, you go through a program, and whoever your champion, Dory Funk Jr. is coming in with the title, and Johnny Baran was the champion. I was the champion here in Hawaii, but the big champions come in to work with me, and I'm there, and something happens, and it builds up. It can build up to the greatest match you've ever seen. It's all personal. It's just an individual. It's an individual thing to go with. Oh, this is the best match, and this is the best guy. No, it's people. People in Tennessee watching guys that don't work, or and that are be turning out to be the best match they ever saw, because it's where they're waiting there. You're invested. You've invested your time, your imagination, everything else into that particular era, that character, that time, that death match, that cage match, whatever you're going to. So it doesn't, when you're calling them, this is the best match of ever, greatest match of all time. It's kind of a two-sided thing. It's I don't know how much water. They're great matches, not to detract from them. But
Depends on your definition of a great match, because some of the stuff today that people say is a great match, I don't like it because it's not realistic.
Yeah. Or where your personal headspace is at the
Yeah.
time. This may be, Cody Rhodes is might be my favorite babyface, and that match, that transpires with him and whoever, KO or that's the greatest match I ever saw, because I'm invested in that thing. That's what I want to see. And then the next greatest match might be the next one, or I may go back to that one as being the greatest ever. But it's just if you try and pigeonhole anything like that, it's wrestling. It's pro wrestling. It's like, what's the best movie you ever saw? What's the best commercial? Everything's subjective. It's hard to be objective, something like that.
And I've wrestled Brutus before, and it was a very easy match.
Yeah,
Just for the record.
yeah, and you can rock the house. He's not doing suplexes off the top rope, and he's not doing that stuff. But if you take your time, you're working together, and the people are invested, you can have that type of match.
Just by going like that, he can get a bigger reaction than some people doing a million flips.
Yeah, it's just that's why I think they get bad raps. Well, another bad rap is like Hulk and Flair being less than men. These guys, Flair going every night, hours and hours and hours all over the world every night. And Hogan in the ring, well, not every night, but he had a demanding schedule when the WWE was going. So Hulk going, these guys are the top of their game, and they're solid, rugged guys. Like you're calling Flair. Maybe they are assholes now. I'm not saying that they are, but just maybe they become assholes after a time. But that's not how they got there.
They weren't as good with picking their wives as you were.
Well, that was timing. She just walked in the gate here. But her and my son's not like. But that's these guys are men. They were they're not they're not John Jones or anything as far as being that tough, but God, they were solid, rough guys. Rough, tough individuals that they're on the road every day. And if they became assholes or manipulative, all behind the scene office guys and stuff, then that's a different, that's a whole different story. But it's unfair to lock them in to some,
I've seen Hogan get attacked by fans, and he's handled himself.
Oh yeah, to think that him and Flair can't take care of himself, it's ridiculous. It's like I say, maybe he's not Bones Jones, but he's he's not a Miss America contestant either. They're a rugged guy. They put their time in. They put their and regardless of what their status or what they may be like now, at one time, they were the man.
Chris wants to know if you have any stories from the famous Brantford, Ontario TV tapings where they used to do them all the time for WWF.
No, that's pretty sterile environment. Only thing I remember, it freaked me out one time. We were they had in the back little locker room gymnasium in the back. A lot of the guys, heels and stuff would hang out. And then above everything, there was a little loft hidden out there. And George was up there smoking crack. I thought, oh, you got to be kidding me. I said, the whole gym just reeked. I said, hey, George, what the fuck? Get out of there. But he was, George, walking George.
Wow. Do you remember Mel Phillips at all? He's so controversial these days. Was he
Yeah,
around when you were there?
yeah. Oh, yeah, he's around a lot. I never, I
You
never,
must have heard the foot fetish rumors,
the
I
foot,
guess.
yeah, young boys and the feet and stuff like that. But he wouldn't pull that with any. We were all established old guys. He was hanging around with the ring crew and those kind of guys. He wasn't. He was. I don't think he was with any of the boys, preliminary or main event or mid card or anything. He wasn't. He was a ring guy, setting up, emceeing and programs and rings and stuff like that. I don't know why he's so prominent with the wrestlers, because he wasn't really part of our entourage.
Ryan wants to know if you have a favorite match with Sergeant Slaughter.
My match with him, or seen, I
Yeah.
saw that one with him and Pat in the garden. That boot camp match is a hell of a match. Any match with Slaughter, we're going back just to reiterate, get redundant over everything. All those matches. Slaughter was a Slaughter, Bill Eadie, Orndorff, Bob Orton, Dick Slater, all those guys. You could get in the ring with all those guys and tear the place apart, because they're all that. Slaughter is one of the great workers. Slaughter is like 6'4", 6'5", 300 pounds, move like a 200-pounder. He's just a great performer, great interviews. Great, great timing, and it's a mental thing too, to know that what you're doing when you need to move, when you need to put in drive, and get the extra gear and do the extra speed, that it's there. So yeah, I never had any big matches with Sarge. I wrestled him around the Carolinas when I was a baby face and he was a heel, and that was after, I don't know why I was baby face, but it was easy. They're easy matches, and Slaughter was consummate professional.
Sunview has a good question, and you may not remember this, but the Metal Maniac said in his interview with me that he had to call you for help when he was wrestling in England because he was getting brutally ribbed by the Dynamite Kid.
True,
And that's true.
true, 100% true. He called me 2 or 3 times before that. Oh, I get there, chopping the shit out and beating the hell out of him, suplexing him all over the place. And you can imagine, what Dynamite was into, and I guess he was pretty well handicapped at the time, so he had to be even meaner than he was when he was before. But yeah, he called me, and pretty much like the story goes, he got put him on the phone, and he hey, Blue, I said, hey, Dino, and I said, give this guy a break. I said, when Snake comes back, he takes Snuka around, he drives Snuka, and it's pair the Snuka has somebody to take him around, and he's not that bad a guy. You're beating the shit out of him.
Did it stop, or did that
I guess,
entice?
yeah. I guess they kind of backed down. He never called me again. And when I saw him back, he was so appreciative. He tried to sell me a freaking a phony fucking Stairmaster, a phony $2,000 cardio machine that didn't work. Oh God,
He's
yeah,
a
that's,
weird guy.
boy. You could go hours on that one.
Vanderstar wondering if you have any unique Andre the Giant stories.
Oh God, uh, pretty much where everybody else goes. I he was on a trip to Japan, when I were on the same tour as Japan. I was in the back. So, but they brought when he came. I think we were on the first week, and he came like the second week. When he did, he walked in the back, and the back of the bus was loaded with cases of beer. It was loaded with it. But he was drinking cognac at the time, so it was sit there and play cards for 3, 4, 5, however long the trip was. You'd be playing cribbage with Skolin or me or somebody, and he'd drink. He was a good guy, good giant. He just he had that agromania, a giant disease, and he knew it was going as his weight was growing and he was growing out of his joints and stuff. He was less and less pleasant, less and less tolerable to the fans and stuff. But he always seemed pretty good. If you liked you, he always liked me. He treated you real good.
Someone is asking how you got along with Mark Lewin, and someone earlier was asking if you ever went surfing with him.
Mark didn't surf. No.
Because he was quite a swimmer, I heard.
I guess, yeah. We used to work out a lot. He moved over here with his Japanese wife, Toroko. But yeah, I started with them. This is my first time in New Zealand. And he and Curtis were running the territory for Steve Ricard, New Zealand territory. And it was a good trip because you go in, like I go in. Mark was established babyface. I'd come in as the new babyface, take the belt from Curtis or work for the belt with Curtis. And Curtis was the heel, and then do about 6-8 months with that, on that angle. And then Rick Martel came and replaced me there, and I went to Australia, across the pond there. So it was, and working with them was great. It was like in New Zealand, say they put the sidewalks in at 6:00, but you always 2, 3 in the morning, you'd be finding different places to go with Curtis and Lewin. They'd always have, whether it be Singapore or Hong Kong or Christchurch, New Zealand, there's always something going on with those guys.
I can imagine. Mike wants to know any Kamala stories, or did you ever wrestle him?
No, I was a heel, and he was never around. I was never around him too much. I remember all I heard one time is somebody brought him a goat or something, cooked him a goat, big hind quarter or something. He ate the whole thing. He was so I guess he was a pretty good eater. But I never hung with Kamal a lot.
Matthew Granahan, the King of Connecticut, wants to know your thoughts on training with guys like Billy Robinson.
Oh, Billy was. I got to meet Billy. He was over here in Hawaii, putting together his passport, his papers, for working in because Lord Blears, Talio Blears, my mentor, who started me. He was fast tagging all the papers through the Japan embassy and the embassy here in Hawaii, which was easier for Billy to get through, to get all his state papers to go to Minnesota for Vern. And me, I was been in the business for about a year, and I was the bonus. I was the prize on that package that Robinson. They took me along with Billy to go to Minnesota, and that was my start in AWA.
Interesting. What were your thoughts on the murder of Bruiser Brody? This person wants to know. Puerto Rico says he reminds him a little bit of Hawaii because it's part of the U.S. but independent. But I think Puerto Rico, I've been to both places now. It's a little bit more third world than Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii's really, really, yeah, it's different. Puerto Rico's a good time. Bruiser Brody, I wasn't around. I never met the man. He came into Australia after I did. He was with Well, I guess Frank Goodish. He went there, Frank Goodish, and Mark gave him the gave him the Bruiser Brody thing. Then he went to Japan, and Curtis showed him all. Oh, this is the red light districts, which there, I guess, in Japan, red light districts means someplace you can go get to eat and drink and a nightclub and stuff at different hours, all hours of the night, day and night like that. But no, I never had the opportunity to meet Brody. We never traveled in the same circle.
There's a fan from Ireland that wants to know about your WrestleMania 4 music, Jesus Christ Superstar. What did you think about that?
Uh, Sucked. It was, that was Vince. I don't know who's Strongbow or Vince. Yeah, that was pretty bad, but whatever. It was from Superstar, so it followed, and that's kind of how I get with Superstar as a manager. So as a theme, I didn't like it. No, but it is what it is.
Here's an interesting fact. It's in the record books. You wrestled 8 1-hour draws with Backlund in a 3-week time period. Do you remember this?
I didn't know the particulars, but yeah, okay, I'll go with that. They weren't, the only one was hard. The only one that was kind of rough was we'd we were in New Haven where I lived. The boys were still living at the time, and I never expected. I was blindsided. I never expected that we were working a return for Hartford, which is 40 miles up the road from New Haven, Connecticut. So I didn't, where I was home, which my apartment or my family house. So I had a big dinner, relaxed, didn't had no sense. Got to the arena. Oh, you guys are going in the hour. Oh, so but it was no big deal, But yeah, that's one thing I remember of it. I remember Bob doing those short arm scissors, picking me up from with the short arm scissors all the time, and working and bringing me up, then putting me down, and bringing me up, and finally bringing me all the way up in his arm. He was strong. He was like a gorilla. His joint strength and his tendon strength was incredible. He was a good guy. I enjoyed working with Bob. First time I worked with him was in Tampa, and that last Tango in Tampa, and he came down, and I was real hot as a heel, so it was a title match, and but I guess we went through 20 or something, but something happened moving around, and boom, I spun around. I hit him with my elbow right in the eye, split him open. I thought, oh shit, there goes my dreams of going to New York, being a heel there. Bring the champion and potato him. It wasn't a big stitch or anything, but it's still got some juice. That's oh man, what did I do that for? But it worked out for the best.
Was there doctors in WWF when you were there for the smaller shows, or mainly
At
just
times, yeah, some places before they went all the way down, they got into the Vince got rid of all the commissions all over.
Ralph? And I don't know if you can confirm this or not. He says he used to set up the ring when he was a kid in 1980 in Glen Falls, New York, and Ivan Putski used to have his own dressing room, and it would be full of Playboy magazines. I guess you probably wouldn't have been in Ivan's dressing room, so you probably couldn't confirm or deny that.
No, I was never in the dressing room with Putski.
Evan Ginsberg, who did the 350 Days movie, says the 1980s Magnificent Muraco was as good as anyone who ever stepped in the ring.
Hey, Evan, yeah. I commute with him time to time. I see him. He's on Facebook. He's done a lot. That 350 days, and the
The
wrestler,
wrestler, yeah.
and another one. Yeah.
Someone says, did you ever wrestle King Kong Bundy?
No. Tag partners maybe, and I was in that angle with him and Hulk, where he kept slamming Hulk, he kept splashing Hulk.
Oh, you
But
were part of that.
yeah, but as far as working with Bundy, I don't remember ever working with him. With his brother, Jeff Pally. His brother's a teacher, wrestling coach from New Jersey. They're friends of Larry Sharp, the Monster Factory, and they're down that area in South Jersey. And they had with Larry. So I remember wrestling his brother. His brother was like 6'4", 6'6", tall, good sized guy. He was a wrestling teacher. He came to do TV jobs and stuff from Philly. He was a good guy too.
Do you think if you had stayed on with WWE, you eventually would have turned back heel and feuded with Hulk Hogan? Because it seemed like you and Hogan really had good chemistry together.
I doubt it. Not by those days. No, Vince had a whole different thing going. I don't exactly know what it was, but it didn't really include me.
Kamala, who I'm sure is not the real Kamala, wants to know how you came up with your unique interview style. Your locker room interview in MSG before the Snuka cage match was phenomenal.
Um, just watching guys over the years. I grew up with King Curtis and Ripper Collins, Johnny Moran in Hawaii, and Lord Blears. They had some of the greatest promo guys ever here in Hawaii. Hawaii used to have a show. I think it was like 2 hours on Friday night, 2.5 hours, the late hour, like the Johnny Carson hours there, and out of and that show they might have 30 minutes of wrestling total time, and the rest of the time was all locker room interviews and everything else. And then they had a Saturday studio show, 2 matches, and if you got and 2 matches, and I think it was an hour, 90-minute program, and if you got 90 minutes of wrestling out of the 2 matches, you're lucky. The rest of the time was wrestling demonstrations and angles and promos. And it was a hell of a show. Long before Vince, like I said before, my promos, there was Ed Francis in Hawaii, Dory Funk Sr. in Amarillo, and Eddie Graham in Florida, and they're three of the most progressive promoters at the time. And they're doing, Ed with the music and everything else, and the Funks are fighting in the streets, literally in the streets and stuff. And then Eddie Graham with all his booking and his masterful finishes and stuff. They were, other things were going around, but as far as smaller territories and keeping those things going, they were the promoters that did. Then other guys too would be like what Piper was, or Lonnie Main, or one of those guys was starring in Portland, or Lewin was up around Vancouver and those areas there. They all had their different bookers and stuff that put stuff together. But I'd go back to Ed and Dory Senior and Eddie.
Hopper says he saw you wrestle Hogan at the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. Rick wants to know if you had any memories of Corporal Kirshner, the Sergeant Slaughter ripoff character.
Yeah, they brought him in for a while. He was a good guy. I would say I was a heel. I worked with him a few times, and a good worker. He would follow. He would listen. Solid, solid worker. Kicks, punches, and stuff. I used to call him Corporal Punishment, but he was a good guy. Good hand.
Just a couple more questions here. Was the pay different for like a SummerSlam compared to a Wrestling Challenge taping? Did you get a pay-per-view cut, or was it just off the house?
To different times, different. I don't know. Every all shows are different. They're like the the pay-per-views. You get one, and then and you get a house show, and you get a TV. Something NBC, you get a TV check, and you get a house check. So
Okay.
a different. But that wasn't consistent with everything, though. It didn't happen all the way. So nothing was solid over there. Something did change in those days.
And any memories of Survivor Series 87 where you team with the Hulkster? I think that was the main event of the very first Survivor Series.
Yeah, is that the first one? That was pretty cool. They flew everybody to Cleveland, Ohio, and everybody had their families and stuff. Had a big, huge, the whole back underneath the building where we were at. They had Thanksgiving for everybody, and it was pretty wild.
Did you have much contact with Elizabeth at all?
No, no one did. Maybe Lanny, but nobody. My wife spoke with her. I don't know, about anything. She was cool. She never, she never got in anybody's business. Never did. Of course, I guess Randy kept her out of everything. But she was, she was a nice lady. Did nobody talk to, really.
Did you like dealing with Randy overall when you would wrestle him?
Didn't wrestle him.
Oh, no, you didn't? Wow.
No, didn't wrestle him. But he seemed, I guess he was, the matches he had and stuff. He was very, professional, good worker. Obviously. Still talking about him now.
Someone wants to know, did you come to know actor Don Stroud in Hawaii during your surfing days?
No, no. The name's familiar. I was thinking of Woody Strode, but that's the black guy.
Last question for today. I know you never partied with the Iron Sheik, but did you ever party with him? Someone wants to know, but you don't seem like the type.
Everybody partied with the Iron Sheik. Everywhere the Sheik went, there was a party. If he had a wastebasket and a bag of ice in his room, there was a party. He drinking beer, doing squats, smoking joints all the time, nonstop. That was the Sheik.
Didn't Jesse always have a party going on in his room too? I heard.
Ventura?
Yeah.
No,
he kept to himself.
Yeah, he was never. I don't know him ever to go out.
Did you ever have a Big Mac with Ken Patera?
I was with Patera when they broke in. They're out at the Gagne's farm. Him and Brunsey, Greg Gagne, Bobby Bruggers, Iron Sheik, Flair. That was about it, the six of them. So when we broke up, I used to hang out. Patera was a single guy, and I was in the process of getting split up at the time. So I used to hang around. They had what was it? Left guard, Fuzzy Thurston and Max McGee from the Packers. They opened one of those big bars in Minneapolis, and that's where we'd hang out at the time. I go with Patera.
He's a great guy. I really like him.
We were at a show in Chicago. Everybody used to stay at the air host. It was a dive, but it was, people been staying there before I got in the business and after. But they had a pool table, and everybody was pretty well lit at the time. And Ernie Ladd was hustling Vic Rositani on the pool table, and you got a quarter. Nobody had a quarter. But there goes, you don't need a quarter. He lifted the pool table up on one side, and all the balls came out.
That's hilarious. Typical wrestling story.
Yeah, that's all the wrestlers were in there except Fuji got barred because they caught him pissing on the table.
Fuji the troublemaker. They need to make a movie about him one of these days, or even a Dark Side of the Ring type.
It's a shame that I saw a Flair interview. He says, hey, it's all the stuff you talk about now, but all the things you can't talk about, because of families and stuff, guys' wives and families and stuff that you don't want to mess up nowadays. So, but
Yeah.
if people could tell the real stories, the real behind there'd be some big money, big money to make out of those. Those know it, tell it all. I tell you.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Someone even says on here, come back for another fan Q&A. Sometimes the fans have really enjoyed it. You're a great.
Anytime. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed you last week. Screwed it up. I was sitting with my phone waiting for. I was quite crossed up. I
It's
was
all right.
looking,
Well, now we know it works, right?
right.
Well, I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to tell the fans. I wish you guys a great rest of your day. Thanks a lot, Mr. Muraco.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure dealing with you guys. I had a lot of great memories, a lot of great friends in and out of the ring, traveling all over the place, and still got still a few memories still floating up there. As it's a shame. I heard Rick going in. It's a shame. Can't tell the background stories, a lot of stuff. But props to Flair and to Hulk and a lot of those guys that may be less than stellar citizens now, but were in my day they were real men growing up, and Jesse and Barb Beefcake and stuff, to slight their work. Nah, when they got into business, that was work. That was working, that style and what they did. So, hello everybody. God bless and have a nice day.